During my son's wedding, his bride laughed at me and said, "With a face like that, you don't need a mask for Halloween." The guests laughed, and I stood there feeling angry and humiliated. But then her father looked more closely, pointed at me, and exclaimed, "He's a hero!" That moment changed everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I wiped the same spot on the coffee table 3 times before I realized what I was doing. The wood gleamed under my palm, already spotless. Gerald had called at 1 o'clock. "Dad, we'll stop by around 1:30. Karen wants to meet you." His voice carried that forced brightness I'd learned to recognize over the phone. The kettle whistled in the kitchen. I arranged Margaret's photo albums on the table, their leather covers cracked with age. Through the front window, bare branches scratched against gray November sky. A yellow leaf clung to the maple tree, trembling in the wind. At 1:25, a silver Audi Q5 pulled into my driveway. I watched Gerald step out, adjusting his North Face jacket. Then she emerged. Karen. White coat that probably cost more than my monthly pension check. Her blonde hair caught what little sunlight filtered through the clouds. She carried a leather bag, designer label visible even from my window. My hand found the doorknob. The metal felt cold. "Dad!" Gerald's smile was wide, nervous. "This is Karen." She extended her hand. Our palms touched briefly, hers smooth, mine scarred and rough. She pulled back fast, her fingers slipping away like she'd touched something hot. Her eyes swept across my living room, the worn couch, the old television, the faded rug Margaret had bought at a garage sale 20 years ago. Something flickered across Karen's face. Not quite disgust. Close enough. "Please, come in. I just boiled water. Would you like some tea?" "I have a caffeine allergy." Karen's voice was pleasant, practiced. She sat on the edge of the couch, her bag clutched on her lap like a shield. Gerald settled beside her, his hand finding hers. "Your place looks great, Dad." "Gerald says you're wonderful at marketing." I lowered myself into the chair across from them. The springs creaked. "Yes, I work for a fashion company downtown." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, fingers moving quickly across the glass. I reached for the photo albums. "These are from when Gerald was small. Maybe you'd like to—" "That's lovely." She flipped pages without looking, her attention still on her phone. Instagram, from what I could see. Photos of food, filtered sunsets. The clock on the mantel ticked. Each second stretched longer than the last. Outside, wind tore at the maple tree. That final yellow leaf held on, barely. Margaret used to make these wonderful cookies. My voice caught on her name. It still did sometimes, even after 10 years. "Chocolate chip with walnuts. Let me get some from the kitchen. I kept the recipe." I stood, my knees protesting. The kitchen doorway was 10 feet away. I walked through it, leaving them in the living room. The cookie tin sat on the counter where I'd placed it that morning, hopeful, foolish. Their voices drifted through the doorway, muffled but clear enough. "Why didn't you warn me?" Karen's whisper carried an edge sharp as broken glass. "He looks like, you know, like that homeless man by the Clark Street station." I froze. The cookie tin felt suddenly heavy in my hands. Gerald's nervous laugh. "Karen, that's my father. He was a firefighter. He got injured saving people from— I understand all that." She cut him off. "But you could have prepared me. I almost screamed when I saw his face." The plate in my hands began to rattle, a tremor in my fingers I couldn't control. The scar on my left cheek pulsed, the way it always did when my heart raced. I forced my face into something resembling calm, forced my feet to move forward. "Here are the cookies." My voice came out steady. Strange, how you can sound normal when something inside you is breaking. Margaret always said the secret was brown sugar instead of white. Karen stood abruptly. "Gerald, we need to go. Your parents are waiting." She emphasized "your parents" in a way that made it clear she meant hers, not mine. "Already?" Gerald's eyes met mine for a second. Guilt flickered there, then disappeared. "Sorry we can't stay longer, Dad. I'll call tonight." "Have a safe drive, kids." I walked them to the door. The smile on my face felt like it might crack and fall off in pieces. Gerald hugged me, quick, awkward. "Love you, Dad." The Audi's engine purred to life. I stood at the window, watching red taillights disappear down the street. The wind finally claimed that last yellow leaf. It spun through the air, dancing before it hit the ground. I sat on the couch where they'd been. Karen's expensive perfume hung in the air, mixing with the lavender scent Margaret had loved. The cracked cup from our 30th anniversary sat on the table, tea growing cold inside it. The scar on my left cheek pulsed with each heartbeat. 2 weeks crawled by. Gerald's promised call never came. Instead, I found myself downtown on a Friday evening, holding a book I'd bought for his Christmas present, but couldn't bring myself to wrap. The drive from Schaumburg took 30 minutes. Traffic on I-90 moved like molasses, red brake lights stretching ahead into the December darkness. I'd left at 5:30, telling myself I needed to pick up the book anyway. Barnes & Noble on State Street stayed open late. The store smelled like coffee and new paper. I wandered through the technology section, running my fingers along spines. The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. Gerald had mentioned wanting to read it months ago, back when we still talked regularly. I paid cash, watching the young cashier try not to stare at my scars. String lights wrapped around bare trees outside. Couples walked past carrying shopping bags, their laughter floating on cold air. I clutched the book against my chest and headed toward the Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. The coffee shop buzzed with Friday evening energy. Ella Fitzgerald sang "Summertime" through overhead speakers. I ordered a latte from a barista with purple hair and found a corner table by the window. A column partially hid me from the entrance. I liked it that way. Anonymous, invisible. Steam rose from my cup. Outside, pedestrians hurried past, breath fogging in the cold. A woman in a red coat stopped to check her phone. A man argued with someone on his Bluetooth. Normal people living normal lives. At 6:50, the door opened. Gerald walked in with Karen close behind. My hand froze halfway to my cup. They didn't scan the room, too focused on each other. Karen's face was tight with irritation. Gerald's shoulders hunched, defensive. They took a table 2 spots away from mine, diagonal. I turned slightly toward the window. The glass reflected their movements like a dark mirror. The column blocked their view of me perfectly. Karen pulled out a notebook, flipping it open with sharp movements. "Look at this seating chart," her voice carried over the holiday music. "Your father cannot sit at the head table. It's obvious." My coffee cup grew hot against my palm. I couldn't move, couldn't look away from their reflection in the glass. "Karen, he's my father." Gerald's words came out quiet, uncertain. I'm not asking you to uninvite him." She leaned forward. "Just put him somewhere less visible. Or maybe hint that he doesn't have to come. Tell him you understand it might be uncomfortable for him. He won't miss my wedding." Gerald stared at the table. "Then he'll ruin every photograph." Her voice rose slightly before she caught herself. "My boss will be there, my colleagues, your friends from work. They'll all see the pictures on social media. What will they think?" I gripped the cup tighter, white knuckles. The scar on my neck burned. "Karen, he's a hero. He saved 17 people in a fire. That was 30 years ago." She waved her hand, dismissive. "Now he's just an old man with terrible scars. I don't want guests talking about him instead of our wedding." The breath left my lungs slowly. Each word she spoke landed like a punch. I kept my face turned toward the window, toward the reflection where I could watch my son sit silently while his future wife dismantled me piece by piece. A long pause. Gerald's reflection showed him rubbing his temples. Finally, "Fine, I'll think about it. Maybe he'll decide not to come on his own." "Good." Karen's smile appeared in the glass. "I knew you'd understand." They stood, ordered coffee to go. The barista called out their names. They took their cups and left at 7:10. Karen's hand possessive on Gerald's arm. I sat motionless for 20 minutes. My coffee went cold. A businessman took the table Gerald and Karen had occupied, spreading papers across it. A teenager laughed too loud at something on her phone. Christmas music cycled through the same cheerful loop. At 7:30, I stood. My legs felt stiff. I left the full cup on the table and walked outside. Rain had started while I sat there. Cold drops hit my face, mixing with something I refused to acknowledge. I had no umbrella, didn't care. The walk to the parking garage took me past a jewelry store. Wedding rings sat in the window display, spotlit against black velvet. Diamonds caught the light, throwing rainbows across the glass. Symbols of promises. I'd made promises too. To Margaret, to Gerald. Had any of them mattered? The parking garage elevator reeked of urine and cigarettes. My car waited on level 3, a beat-up Honda Civic that had seen better decades. I got in, water dripping from my coat onto the seats. The book sat on the passenger side, still in its Barnes & Noble bag. I didn't start the engine immediately, just sat in the dark, listening to rain drum on the concrete ceiling above. My reflection stared back from the rearview mirror, scarred, tired, unwanted. The drive home was a blur of red taillights through rain-smeared windshield. I pulled into my driveway at 10:15. The house was dark. I'd forgotten to leave the porch light on. The key scraped against the lock twice before I got it in. Inside, the house felt colder than the December night outside. I'd forgotten to adjust the heating before leaving. My breath fogged in the entryway. The wet coat dripped onto the floor. I left it hanging there. Water pooling on hardwood, Margaret had refinished herself one summer. The sound of rain on the roof filled the silence. That and the clock in the living room, ticking away seconds like it had all the time in the world. I turned on one lamp. The harsh overhead lights felt wrong. Margaret's leather chair waited by the cold fireplace. I sank into it. Even after 10 years, it still smelled faintly of her lavender lotion. The TV remote sat on the armrest. I pressed power without thinking. The Searchers flickered to life. John Wayne riding across Monument Valley in Technicolor. I'd seen it 100 times. Couldn't tell you what happened in the first 20 minutes tonight. My thumb hovered over buttons I didn't press. Karen's words kept playing on repeat. Just an old man with terrible scars. I stood, paced to the window. Rain slashed the glass in sheets. The maple tree's branches thrashed like they were fighting something invisible. The street lay empty. No cars, no people. Just darkness and storm. Somewhere out there, Gerald was probably home. Safe in his Lincoln Park apartment with its exposed brick and stainless steel appliances. Warm, planning a wedding I'd ruined by attending. I'd held him minutes after he was born. A red screaming bundle that fit in my 2 hands. Margaret cried. So did I. Though I'd never admitted it to the other guys at the station. His tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb with surprising strength. When he was 5, he'd said, "Daddy, you're the bravest in the world." I'd just come home from a call, still in my gear, ash on my face. He hugged my legs so tight I could barely walk. We'd gone fishing on Lake Michigan when he was 12. He caught nothing all day but laughed anyway, his line tangled for the 3rd time. "It's about being together, right, Dad?" The funeral. Gerald at 25, sobbing against my shoulder while Margaret's casket lowered into frozen ground. "What do we do now?" he'd asked. "We keep going," I'd told him. "Together, always together." The words tasted bitter now. Together. What a lie that turned out to be. I walked to the kitchen, opened the cabinet above the stove. Jameson. Margaret had given it to me one Christmas years ago. I poured 2 fingers into a glass. It sat there, amber under the overhead light. I didn't drink, just needed something to hold. Back in the living room, I set the glass beside Margaret's cracked cup. 2 untouched drinks. Some kind of statement I couldn't quite name. Maybe Karen was right. Maybe I did ruin things. People stared when I went out. Children asked their parents questions in loud voices. I saw adults look away, embarrassed, uncomfortable. The grocery store, the library, even church back when I still went. Gerald deserved a perfect day. Karen wanted her perfect wedding. My face in the photographs would... What? Remind people that life isn't perfect? That heroes get burned saving others? I could text him right now. Say I'm sick. He'd understand. Relief would flood through him, even if he'd never admit it. My hand found my phone. The screen lit up, too bright in the dark room. My fingers moved across the keyboard. "Gerald, I can't make the wedding. I'm sorry. Be happy. I love you." I stared at the words. They looked wrong, felt wrong, like surrender. I deleted them. Tried again. "Son, I understand if you'd prefer I don't attend. Let me know." Worse. That one was worse. Like I was asking permission to be his father. I set the phone down. On TV, John Wayne rode into sunset, the hero getting his ending. The credits rolled. The rain outside softened to a steady rhythm. I raised him alone after Margaret died, cooked his meals when he came home from college on weekends, attended his graduation, helped him move into his first apartment, listened to him talk about work promotions, about meeting Karen, about falling in love. Where was she during all of that? These scars, I earned them. 17 people walked out of that building alive because I ran in when others ran out. Arthur Arnold, Linda Chen, the Rodriguez brothers, names I remembered, faces I still saw sometimes in dreams. They'd lived, I'd burned, that was the trade. But maybe stepping back was the last gift I could give Gerald. Let him be happy without his scarred father shadowing everything. Let him have his perfect wedding and his perfect wife and his perfect life. The photo on the mantelpiece caught lamplight. Margaret smiling at our 35th anniversary dinner, 3 years before the cancer took her. She'd worn that blue dress I loved. Her hand rested on mine in the photograph, her wedding ring catching camera flash. I stood before it, studying her face like I could will her to speak. What would she say? I knew exactly what she'd say. Harold, you ran into burning buildings for strangers. Her voice in my memory, clear as yesterday. You think I married a man who runs away? After the fire, during those months in the hospital, she'd sat beside my bed every single day. When I finally saw my face in a mirror, when I'd turned away unable to look, she'd taken my chin in her hand, gentle but firm, made me look at her instead. Your scars are medals, she'd said. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth your time. Margaret would have marched to that coffee shop, would have told Karen exactly where she could put her perfect wedding, would have stood beside me at that ceremony with her head high, daring anyone to comment. What would you do, Meg? The answer came easy. She'd go. She'd hold her head high. And she'd dare anyone to say a word. I walked to the bedroom hallway, opened the dresser drawer. Beneath old socks, the medal lay wrapped in tissue paper. For valor. The newspaper clippings were there too, yellowed with age. Firefighter saved 17, critically burned. A photo of me in the hospital, face wrapped in bandages. Another from the ceremony 6 months later, my new scars still red and angry as I shook the mayor's hand. I touched the medal's cold metal. Didn't take it out. Just looked. Then closed the drawer. I didn't need it. I knew what I'd done. Knew who I was. Back in the chair, I picked up my phone again. Typed, Gerald, I can't make the wedding. Deleted it. No. This was my son's wedding. I was his father. I raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him. I had every right to be there. I wouldn't hide. Wouldn't pretend I didn't exist. Karen wanted perfection. She'd get dignity. I'd show them what real strength looked like. Tomorrow, I'd buy a new suit, get a haircut, walk into that wedding looking exactly like the father of the groom should. I sat back, closing my eyes. Not to sleep, just to rest before the battle ahead. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The sky turned from black to gray, that pre-dawn color that meant morning was coming, whether I was ready or not. I stood, joints stiff from sitting all night. My reflection in the window looked back at me, scarred, tired, but unbroken. Tomorrow, I'd start preparing. But first, I needed coffee. I made coffee at 6:30. My hands were steadier than I expected. Outside, the sky had turned from gray to pale blue. The rain finally gone. I'd slept maybe 90 minutes. Didn't matter. I had work to do. The closet door creaked when I opened it. 3 suits hung there, relics from the 90s, moth-eaten shoulders, outdated cuts. I ran my hand over the fabric of one. Margaret had picked it out for Gerald's high school graduation. The sleeve felt thin under my fingers, threadbare. None of these would do. Not for this. At 9:15, my phone rang. Gerald's name lit up the screen. Dad, how are you? His voice carried that forced brightness again. Haven't heard from you in a while. I set my coffee cup down carefully. I'm fine, Gerald. Wedding preparations going well? A pause. Then, actually, that's why I'm calling. Karen's worried about the seating arrangements. We have limited space at the head table. Maybe you'd be more comfortable sitting with my colleagues, people closer to your age. The coffee had gone cold. I stared at it. Gerald, are you asking me not to come to your wedding? Silence stretched between us. 5 seconds. 10. I counted. No, of course not. The words tumbled out too fast. Just thought you might be more comfortable. I understand. I cut him off. Don't worry, I'll be there. I hung up before he could respond, sat at the table, jaw tight. He couldn't even say it directly. Couldn't find the courage to tell his own father the truth. By 11, I was in the car. The drive to Woodfield Mall took 10 minutes, traffic light on Saturday morning. The parking lot sprawled endless, cars glinting in weak December sun. I found a spot near the Macy's entrance, sat there a moment before getting out. One last moment of doubt. Then I opened the door. Men's Warehouse occupied a corner of the mall. Mannequins posed in the windows wearing suits I couldn't afford. I walked in anyway. Rows of jackets lined the walls, organized by color and price. A young man approached, maybe 25, professionally friendly. "Good morning, sir. Can I help you find something?" "I need a suit." The words came out firmer than I felt. "For my son's wedding. Something elegant." Jake, his name tag read Jake, didn't react to my scars. Either genuinely unbothered or expertly trained. He gestured toward the Navy section. "Special occasions call for classic choices. May I suggest—" We spent the next hour moving between mirrors and racks. Charcoal, navy, black. I tried on a Hugo Boss in navy, the fabric smooth against my skin. Expensive. The three-way mirror showed me from every angle. The scars were still there, livid against my neck. But the suit transformed everything else. "This fits you perfectly, sir." Jake adjusted the shoulders. "Special occasion?" "My son's wedding." His smile reached his eyes. "Wonderful. He'll be proud to have such an elegant father." The words hit me unexpectedly. Something loosened in my chest. When was the last time someone had said something kind about me being Gerald's father? We selected a white shirt, a burgundy tie, black leather shoes that needed no breaking in. Jake measured for alterations, sleeve length, trouser hem. The total came to $950. I handed over my credit card, heard it scrape against the limit, heard it go through anyway. "These will be ready Monday," Jake said, writing up the order. "We'll call when they're in." "Thank you." I meant it. "You've been very kind." At 2:30, I pushed through the door of Classic Cuts. The barbershop smelled like aftershave and old leather. Photos of classic haircuts covered the walls. James Dean, Cary Grant, men from when style meant something. Sandra looked up from sweeping hair off the floor. 50s, no-nonsense face, warm eyes. "Have a seat, honey. What are we doing today?" "I need a haircut. Modern, but not too young." She ran fingers through my hair, assessing. "When was your last cut?" 6 months ago." Her scissors began their work. Snip, snip, snip. A rhythm that felt almost meditative. She noticed the scars, impossible not to, but didn't flinch, didn't pause. "You have interesting features, sir." She met my eyes in the mirror. "These scars, they tell a story. A story not everyone wants to hear." Sandra's hands stilled. "Then they're fools." She resumed cutting. "You look like a real man who's lived through real life. Nothing wrong with that." She trimmed my beard next, shaped it neatly along my jaw. When she finished, I stared at the mirror. The scars remained. They'd always remain. But the overall effect, clean, respectable, dignified. "You look wonderful, sir. Special event?" "My son's wedding. He's lucky to have a father like you." I left her a $20 tip, rare for me. But gratitude demanded it. Tiffany and Kobe's felt intimidating. Glass cases full of diamonds and silver. Prices that made my chest tight. But I walked in anyway, determined. A salesperson materialized, polished, and professional. "May I help you?" "I need a wedding gift for my son and his bride." She showed me photo frames, simple ones, ornate ones. I selected something elegant but not ostentatious. Silver, clean lines, $250. "Can you engrave it?" "Of course." "What would you like?" I thought carefully. "Gerald and Karen, 1402-2025. With love, Dad." "Beautiful. They'll treasure this." I paid with what remained in my savings account. The frame would be ready in a week. She wrapped it in signature Tiffany blue, white ribbon tied perfectly. By 5 o'clock, I was home. The navy suit hung on my bedroom door in its garment bag, breathing. The Tiffany box sat on my dresser, promise and question mark combined. I sat on the edge of the bed, removed my shoes, looked at everything I'd bought. This was all I could do. The rest was on their conscience. On my nightstand, that old photo, me and Gerald at Lake Michigan, both of us holding fishing rods, both of us smiling. I picked it up, studied his face. 10 years old. Still believed his father hung the moon. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes off, looking at the suit hanging on the door. Navy fabric, crisp white shirt, burgundy tie. 2 months until Valentine's Day. 2 months until I'd find out if any of it mattered. The 2 months crawled by. Gerald called twice, both times brief, awkward. I picked up the suit from Men's Warehouse on December 10th. The engraved frame from Tiffany's arrived December 15th. I kept both in my bedroom, visual reminders of the day approaching. Now it was February 13th, the day before the wedding, and my nerves felt like live wires. I woke at 6:30 without an alarm. Breakfast sat on the table, eggs, toast, coffee, but my stomach was too tight to eat. I pushed food around the plate, watching it grow cold. The calendar on the wall showed February 13th circled in pencil, tomorrow circled in red. Valentine's Day. Wedding day. By 10, I'd taken the suit from the closet for the third time that morning, inspected every detail, lint, threads, creases, found none. I ironed the white shirt anyway, pressing creases that already existed, polished the shoes with an old cloth until they gleamed like black mirrors, laid everything out on the bed like a soldier's kit before inspection. I tried on the full outfit, stood before the mirror. A different man looked back. Or maybe the same man, just dressed better. The scars were still there, but everything else said, I'm ready. I changed back into jeans and a flannel shirt, hung the suit carefully on the door. Couldn't risk wrinkles now. At 11:30, my phone rang. Lawrence's name on the screen. Harold, tomorrow's the big day. His enthusiasm burst through the speaker. Can't wait to see you in that new suit. We'll be like the old days, brother. I smiled despite myself. Thanks, Larry. I hope everything goes smoothly. Remember when Gerald was little? You were so proud at his Little League games, his school plays. You still should be. I hope he remembers too. See you tomorrow, brother. Chin up. The call ended. I felt slightly less alone. By 2 o'clock, I sat at the dining table with the Tiffany box, gold wrapping paper, scissors, ribbon. Margaret had always wrapped gifts, elegant bows, perfect corners. I'd never been good at it. The first attempt ended with torn paper. The second used too much tape. The third looked passable if you didn't examine it too closely. I wrote the card slowly, fountain pen Margaret had given me years ago, choosing each word, Gerald, I'm proud of you. May your life be filled with love and happiness. Dad. My handwriting looked neater than usual. Margaret had taught me that. Said a man should write legibly, with intention. I sealed the envelope, set the wrapped gift on my dresser beside the suit. At 4 o'clock, I tried calling Gerald. The phone rang 3 times, then went to voicemail. Declined. A few minutes later, a text arrived. Busy with preparations? See you tomorrow, Dad. I stared at the screen, typed a response. Looking forward to it, son. My thumb hovered over send. I deleted it, set the phone down on the table. At 5, despite the temperature hovering near freezing, I went out to the porch, sat in the wooden chair without a jacket. Clear winter night, stars beginning to appear. My breath fogged in the cold air. I watched my neighbors' houses, warm lights glowing in windows, families inside doing family things. My house behind me sat dark except for one lamp. Tomorrow everything changes. Either Gerald sees I'm worth respecting, or I lose my son. Simple as that. I stayed until my fingers went numb, about 30 minutes. Finally went inside, feeling nothing in my hands. The evening news played at 7:30. A story about veteran firefighters receiving commendations. I watched young faces, old equipment, familiar danger. Remembered my years, the alarm bells ringing at 3 a.m., gear heavy on shoulders, heat so intense it warped metal, the day of the Bradley fire, smoke so thick I couldn't see my hand, carrying people out, going back in, the beam falling, flames everywhere, waking in the hospital, bandages covering half my face, Margaret crying in the chair beside my bed. I turned off the TV. At 10, I tried to sleep, lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The suit hanging on the door was visible in streetlight filtering through the window. I turned over, couldn't settle, got up, drank water from the kitchen sink. Back to bed. The clock read 11:47, then 1:15. Finally, around 1:30, exhaustion won. I woke to gray February light filtering through curtains. 6:15 a.m., Valentine's Day, my son's wedding day. I lay there a moment, then sat up. Today I'd find out if dignity mattered more than appearance. I put on the navy suit at 1 o'clock, white shirt, burgundy tie, black shoes polished until they gleamed. The mirror showed a man I barely recognized, neat, respectable, determined. The scars were still there. They'd always be there. But everything else said, I belong here. I called a taxi for 2:30. The drive took 30 minutes, Schaumburg to the Chicago lakefront, traffic moderate for a Friday afternoon. The taxi driver didn't speak much, which suited me fine. I watched the city slide past the window, clutching the Tiffany gift box on my lap. At 3 o'clock, the taxi pulled up to the Lakeshore Hotel. I paid the driver, stepped out onto the sidewalk. The building rose before me, glass and steel, modern, expensive. Panoramic windows reflected Gray Lake, Michigan behind me. I straightened my tie, took a deep breath. This was it. No turning back. The lobby opened up like a cathedral, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, elegant people moving through elegant space. A woman with a clipboard approached, professional smile in place. "Good afternoon. Are you a guest of the bride or groom?" "I'm father of the groom." Her smile faltered, just for a second. Confusion flickered across her face, checking some mental list where my name apparently didn't appear, but she recovered smoothly. "Oh, wonderful. Welcome, Mr. Matthews. The ceremony will be at 5 in the main hall, 3rd floor." I nodded, moved toward the elevators. Karen hadn't mentioned me. Didn't surprise me anymore. The 3rd floor opened onto a preparation wing. I heard voices, followed the sound. Gerald's prep room had the door slightly ajar. I knocked softly. Gerald turned from the mirror where he'd been adjusting his bow tie. Saw me, froze. "Dad, you're so early? Wanted to congratulate you before the ceremony." I extended the gift box. "For you and Karen." He took it, fingers careful on the blue wrapping. "Thank you." He didn't open it, just held it, uncertain what to do next. Uncomfortable silence filled the space between us. The door opened. Karen entered wearing a Vera Wang wedding dress that probably cost more than my car. Stunning, objectively. She stopped when she saw me. "Oh, Mr. Matthews, you're already here." Her voice could have frozen the lake outside. "Karen, you look beautiful. Congratulations." She turned to Gerald. "Gerald, we need to finish preparations. We have so much to do." I understood. "I won't interfere. See you at the ceremony." The door closed behind me before I'd finished speaking. At 3:30, I entered the main banquet hall. My breath caught. White roses and orchids covered every surface. Gold chairs arranged in perfect rows. Crystal glassware sparkled on white-clothed tables. And those windows, floor to ceiling, showing the gray expanse of Lake Michigan. The Chicago skyline stark against winter clouds. A string quartet was setting up near the ceremony space, tuning instruments. Classical music drifted through the hall, soft and expectant. The head table sat elevated at the front, for bride, groom, and parents. Other tables had numbered cards. I walked slowly through the space, touched a flower arrangement, smelled fresh roses, furniture polish, the scent of money and careful planning. Karen had created a fairy tale, just wished I fit into it. "Harold, over here!" Lawrence sat at table 8, far from the head table, far from the ceremony space, but he was here, waving enthusiastically. Relief flooded through me. I joined him, and he stood, pulled me into a hug. "Look at you, Hollywood star! That suit is something else." Decided not to embarrass my son. Lawrence's expression hardened. "He should be proud of you, always should have been." We sat. Lawrence gestured around the hall. "This place is something else. Must have cost a fortune." "Karen comes from money." "Well, you look like you belong here, brother. Don't forget that." By 4 o'clock, guests began arriving. Karen sighed. Elegant clothing, designer labels, the air of people who'd never worried about money. Gerald's colleagues from the tech company, young, fashionable, talking about apps and startups. Some glanced at me, noticed the scars, whispered to their companions. I heard fragments. "Who's that?" "Must be someone's uncle." Lawrence bristled beside me. I touched his arm. "Let it go." More guests filled the space. Aunts, uncles, friends. The noise level rose. Waiters appeared with champagne and canapes. One approached our table. "Champagne, sir? Just water, please." I wanted a clear head for whatever was coming. At 4:45, commotion erupted at the entrance. A man's loud laugh carried across the hall. Arthur Arnold entered with his wife Nancy beside him. He was energetic, red-faced, gray-haired, broad-shouldered. Nancy wore an elegant peach dress, pearls at her throat. They greeted guests warmly, handshakes and hugs, working the room like politicians. Arthur's voice boomed. "Where's my beautiful daughter?" I watched from table 8, too far away for him to notice me. He was focused on the crowd, on celebration, on joy. Lawrence leaned close. "That's Karen's father?" "Arthur Arnold. Built a construction company." I didn't mention anything else. Didn't mention 1995. Because I didn't know yet. Didn't know he was one of the 17. That revelation would come later. At 4:55, Michelle's voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The ceremony will begin in 5 minutes." Around me, guests moved toward chairs arranged in rows facing the ceremony space. I stood, straightened my tie one last time, followed Lawrence toward the 4th row. Not the front row where fathers should sit, but I was here. That had to count for something. At 5 o'clock exactly, the string quartet shifted from Vivaldi to Pachelbel's Canon in D. The officiant, an older man in a dark suit, took his place at the altar. Gerald stood beside him, hands clasped, smiling nervously. I sat in the 4th row, left side, Lawrence beside me. The front row, where fathers should sit, held only Arthur and Nancy Arnold. Guests rose as the music swelled, the doors opened. Karen appeared with Arthur's arm through hers, radiant in white, her gown flowing like water. Arthur walked with pride, chest out, beaming at his daughter. They moved down the aisle slowly, giving guests time to admire. Gerald's face transformed when he saw her. Pure joy, uncomplicated. The way I'd once looked at Margaret. They reached the altar. Arthur kissed Karen's cheek, placed her hand in Gerald's, then joined Nancy in the front row. The ceremony began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The words washed over me, vows exchanged, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. I wondered if they included regardless of appearance in their private promises. Probably not. Rings slipped onto fingers. The kiss. Applause erupted. "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Gerald Matthews." I clapped along with everyone else. My smile felt painted on. At 5:45, guests moved to the adjacent cocktail room. Waiters circulated with champagne and canapes. I took a flute, but didn't drink, just held it. Lawrence stayed close, a silent presence I was grateful for. "You okay, brother?" "Fine, just watching." At 6:05, the photographer Kevin began setting up near the windows. "Family photos." His voice carried cheerfully. Gerald and Karen took center position, arms around each other. Kevin adjusted lights, checked his camera. "Parents, please!" Arthur and Nancy joined immediately, wrapping the couple in embraces. Flash, flash, flash. Laughter and warmth captured in pixels. Mark, Karen's brother, jumped in making faces. Mrs. Wilson, someone's grandmother, posed formally. Various combinations, bride side exclusively, college friends, work colleagues. I stood 20 feet away, waiting. Surely Gerald would call me soon. Gerald glanced my direction once. Our eyes met. He looked away quickly. Karen's hand touched his arm, steering his attention back to the camera. More photos, more laughter. The line grew shorter. Lawrence whispered beside me. "Harold, why isn't Gerald calling you?" My hand gripped the champagne flute tighter than necessary. "He doesn't want me ruining the pictures." "That's crazy. You're his father. You raised him alone after Margaret died." "Larry, please." My voice came out flat. "Don't make a scene. Today's his day." The photo session ended. No call had come. Guests began drifting toward the banquet hall. I walked slowly, the champagne still untouched in my hand. At 6:30, the banquet hall doors opened. Tables with numbered cards waited. The head table sat elevated, flowers abundant, for the newlyweds and parents, Arthur and Nancy only. I searched until I found my card. Table 8. Near the windows overlooking the darkening lake, far from everything that mattered. Lawrence followed. "We're stuck in Siberia. At least the view's nice." I meant the lake, not the people. Our table mates introduced themselves. Mike, 27, tech startup energy. Sarah, 29, professional Polish. Both worked with Gerald. They glanced at my scars, exchanged looks. Sarah whispered to Mike, not quite quiet enough. "Is that Gerald's father?" "He never mentioned," Mike whispered back. "Those scars. What happened to him?" "Better not ask." Tom, one of Karen's friends, tried harder. "So, you're Gerald's father? Nice to meet you." "Yes, pleasure. Gerald's a great guy. You must be proud." I paused before answering. "Always have been." Conversation died. Uncomfortable silence settled over our table like fog. At 7, lights dimmed slightly. A spotlight found the head table. The MC's voice boomed. "Time for toasts!" Arthur stood, microphone in hand, face flushed with happiness. "My daughter Karen has always been a princess. Today she found her prince. Gerald, you're a lucky man. May your life together be as beautiful as this day." Guests raised glasses. "To the couple!" Applause. Cheers. Nancy added brief words about love and family. Gerald thanked everyone. "Thank you all for being here. This means everything to us." No mention of me, not a word. I raised my water glass quietly to myself. "To my son?" Karen whispered something to Gerald. They laughed together. Arthur's arm wrapped around Nancy. A perfect family tableau at the head table, complete without me. At 7:15, waiters brought food. Arugula pear salad, filet mignon with truffle puree, chocolate mousse. Everything looked exquisite. I cut the meat into small pieces, chewed mechanically, tasted nothing. Lawrence touched my shoulder occasionally. Silent support. Mike and Sarah talked about tech. Tom and Lisa discussed vacation plans. I sat silent, watching the head table like it was a stage and I was audience, not family. At 7:25, the MC's voice boomed through speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our guest photo session. Everyone who wants a picture with the happy couple, please form a line by the windows." Around the room, chairs scraped. Guests stood, laughing, moving toward the photo zone. Lawrence looked at me. I looked at the head table, where Gerald and Karen were rising, smiling. Maybe this was my chance. I stood when Lawrence nudged me. "Go on, your turn." My legs felt heavy walking toward the windows where Kevin, the photographer, was setting up lights. A line had formed, 20, maybe 30 people waiting. I joined the end, hands at my sides, heart beating faster than it should. Arthur and Nancy went first. Arms around the couple, beaming, 4 faces glowing with joy. Flash, flash, flash. Mark came next, throwing peace signs, everyone laughing. College friends posed with silly expressions. Gerald's colleagues maintained professional smiles. Each photo captured warmth, belonging, connection. I watched from my place in line. They all fit. I didn't. The line shortened. My turn approached. Lawrence watched from table 8, tense, as if willing strength into me. "Next, please," Kevin called. I stepped forward. Gerald saw me. His body tensed, shoulders rising slightly. Karen's smile froze into something harder. "Congratulations again." I moved toward them, intending to stand between father and son for one photograph. Just one. My hand began to rise, reaching toward Gerald's shoulder. Karen's voice cut through the moment, loud and cheerful, performing for nearby guests. "Mr. Matthews, with a face like that, you don't need a Halloween mask," she laughed, looking at the people around us. Some guests laughed too, uncomfortable, uncertain, but laughter nonetheless. "Ha! Halloween joke! That's harsh!" More laughter, nervous energy spreading. Gerald smiled weakly. "Karen?" The word carried no force, no defense, just acknowledgement that she'd spoken. I froze mid-reach, my hand hung in air, then slowly lowered to my side. My face became stone. I took a deep breath through my nose, forced my mouth into something resembling a smile, teeth clenched behind it. "Indeed, Karen, very funny." My voice sounded flat, mechanical, like I was reading lines. My eyes betrayed me, I knew. The pain must have shown there. Kevin jumped in quickly, embarrassed. Smile, everyone!" Flash, flash, flash. The camera captured it all. Harold beside the couple, visible distance between us. Me, not smiling naturally, more grimace than joy. Gerald uncomfortable. Karen satisfied. "Congratulations once more." I kept my voice steady. "Happy life." I turned, walked back toward table 8, head straight, shoulders back, dignity even in humiliation. Behind me, voices continued. That was brutal. But he handled it well. Who is he anyway? No idea? Some distant relative? I heard fragments, kept walking. Reached table 8, sat heavily. My hands went under the table where no one could see them trembling. Lawrence leaned close, angry whisper. Harold! What was that? How dare she say that to you? Leave it, Larry. My voice shook despite my best efforts. Doesn't matter. It does matter. You don't deserve that kind of treatment. I stared at the tablecloth. I've done everything I could. Don't you dare leave. Don't let her win. I'll stay for the wedding. I met his eyes. But I'm done trying to be part of this family. At 8 o'clock, I picked up my napkin, wiped my mouth though I hadn't eaten anything recently. Mechanical action. Enough. I'd come. I'd tried. I'd worn the suit, brought the gift, held my head up through ceremony and photos and humiliation. But I couldn't take more of this. My hand gripped the chair arm. Time to leave. Go home. Never return. Gerald had made his choice. Maybe Karen was right. Maybe I didn't belong in their perfect world. One last look at the head table. Gerald and Karen laughing at something Arthur was saying. Arthur gesturing broadly, telling some story. They looked happy. Complete without me. Goodbye, son. I whispered it, knowing no one could hear. I was halfway out of my chair when a voice cut through the noise. Loud, commanding, shocked. He's a hero! Every head in the room turned toward the bar. Arthur Arnold stood there, arm extended, finger pointing directly at me. He's a hero! Arthur Arnold's voice rang across the ballroom. Music still played softly, but conversations died. Heads turned. I stood frozen, half risen from my chair. Arthur's finger aimed at me like an accusation. Or a proclamation. Nancy touched his arm. Arthur? What are you doing? He ignored her, staring at me with an intensity that made my chest tight. He set his whiskey glass on the bar, strode toward me. Guests parted, creating a path. His eyes never left my face. I stood fully, confused but maintaining composure. He stopped 3 feet away, studying me. Left side scars, nose shape, eyes, recognition solidifying in his expression. This man is a hero! Louder now, making sure everyone heard. He saved my life, guests murmured, confused. From the head table, Karen's voice carried. Gerald, what's happening? What's my father saying? Gerald stood bewildered. I don't know. Arthur kept staring at me, and I watched memories flooding his face. His voice changed, softer but urgent. August 1995, Bradley Manufacturing Plant, South Side. The words triggered my own memories. That day, that fire. Arthur continued, speaking to me, but loud enough for others. I was trapped in my office, 2nd floor, gas line explosion below, smoke so thick I couldn't see my own hand, door jammed. I thought I was dead. His eyes glistened. Then you came through that smoke, gear, mask, strong hands grabbing me. Hold on to me, you said. You carried me down those stairs, through flames. I couldn't breathe, but you kept saying, stay with me. We're getting out, I remembered. Young manager, unconscious when I found him, West Wing, 2nd floor, heavy dead weight over my shoulder. Stairs barely visible through smoke. Heat so intense my gear was melting. Arthur's voice broke slightly. Outside, fresh air, paramedics. You visited me in the hospital later. Half your face was bandaged, but I saw your name badge. Matthews. I searched for you for years after you left the department. Lost track. He gestured around the room. And now, here you are, at my daughter's wedding. Realization hit him visibly. My daughter's wedding? You're Gerald's father? I nodded slowly. Bradley Manufacturing, 1995. You were unconscious. Office on the 2nd floor, West Wing. Yes. Arthur's emotion broke through completely. You saved me and 16 others that night. You're the reason I'm alive. The reason I walked my daughter down that aisle. The room had gone completely silent. Some guests pulled out phones, searching. One found an article. It's true. Look, hero firefighter saves 17, critically burned. Harold Matthews, Chicago Fire Department. Whispers spread. Look at this article. He's a real hero. Those scars are from saving lives. Gerald still stood at the head table, face pale. He hadn't known the full story. Not really. Not the details. Karen stood beside him, mouth open, stunned. Arthur extended his hand to me, then seemed to realize that gesture was insufficient. Instead, he pulled me into an embrace, unexpected, powerful, his arms strong around me. "Thank you," his voice broke. "Thank you for my life. Thank you." I stood stiffly at first, then relaxed slightly. "You're welcome, sir." Arthur stepped back, wiped his eyes with his palm, turned to face the room, voice carrying to every corner. "This man sacrificed himself for strangers. The scars you see, those are from saving lives, including mine." Guests sat silent, absorbing. Some who'd laughed earlier looked ashamed. Karen stood frozen, beginning to comprehend the magnitude of her mistake. Gerald stared at me as if seeing his father for the first time in his life. Arthur turned back to me, then to the room again, his face set with determination, jaw tight with purpose. "I need a microphone," he said, voice carrying clearly. The MC hurried over with the wireless mic. Arthur took it, turned to face all the guests, and I knew whatever came next would change everything. Arthur turned to the MC, who stood frozen with the wireless microphone. "Give that to me. Now." His voice left no room for argument. The MC handed it over. The jazz band fell silent mid-note. 300 guests turned toward the center of the ballroom, where Arthur stood, microphone in hand, his face flushed with emotion. Nancy reached for his arm. "Arthur, what are you doing? This is the wedding." "That's exactly why I must do this." He pulled away gently, walked to the center of the ballroom under the main chandelier where everyone could see him, cleared his throat. The microphone amplified the sound. Complete silence fell over the room. "Forgive me for interrupting this celebration," Arthur began, his voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. "But I must say something that cannot wait." He pointed directly at me. "This man, Harold Matthews, father of our groom, is a hero. A real hero." Guests murmured, confused. Some looked at me, then back at Arthur. I stood motionless by table 8, processing what was happening. Arthur's voice grew stronger. 30 years ago, August 1995, there was a terrible fire at Bradley Manufacturing Plant on Chicago's South Side. I was operations manager there. A gas line explosion on the first floor. Flames spread instantly. I was trapped in my second-floor office. Smoke filled the hallway so thick I couldn't see my own hand. The door jammed. I couldn't breathe. He paused, letting the words settle. The room held its breath. I thought I was going to die. I remember lying on that floor, consciousness fading, certain those were my last moments. His voice broke slightly. But this man, Harold Matthews, Chicago Fire Department, he came through those flames. When everyone else was running out, he ran in. He found me barely breathing on that office floor. He carried me on his shoulders down those stairs, through fire and smoke that would have killed us both. Arthur wiped his eyes with his free hand. I remember his voice through his mask. "Hold on, I've got you." That voice saved my life, and it wasn't just me. That night, Harold saved 17 people. 17. He went back into that building again and again until everyone was out. The room remained silent. Some guests had pulled out phones, searching. But the price... Arthur's voice dropped, became grave. The price was enormous. During the last rescue, a burning beam fell on Harold. He suffered severe burns. Face, neck, hands, back. Months in the hospital, multiple surgeries. His firefighting career ended that day. He was 35 years old. My hand found the back of my chair, gripping it for support. These memories, spoken aloud after so many years of silence. "When I visited him in the hospital," Arthur continued, "you know what he said? 'Just doing my job, sir.' No complaint, no self-pity, just quiet dignity." He looked directly at me. "I searched for you for years, Harold. Wanted to thank you properly. Lost track when you left the department. And tonight, at my daughter's wedding, I see you again. The man who gave me 30 more years of life. Father of my daughter's husband." Understanding rippled through the crowd. Guests' phones glowed like scattered fireflies as they searched and found articles. Someone said loudly enough to hear, "Here! Hero firefighter saves 17, critically burned." "It's him!" Another voice. "I remember this story. It was all over the news in 95. Arthur turned sharply toward the head table, his expression hardening. "Karen," His voice carried authority and disappointment. Do you understand what you did tonight? You mocked the man who saved your father's life. You humiliated a hero at your own wedding. Karen stood pale and trembling, one hand covering her mouth. Harold Matthews looks the way he does because he gave part of himself saving others. His scars aren't flaws. They're medals of courage. Arthur's voice rang through the ballroom. And if anyone here doesn't understand that, he looked around the room slowly. They don't deserve to know a man like him. Powerful silence followed. Then Arthur walked back toward me, leaving the microphone on a nearby table. He stopped before me, studied my face once more, then pulled me into an embrace. Thank you, he whispered, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. Thank you for my life, for these 30 years with Nancy, for seeing my daughter grow up, for this moment. I embraced him back, finally allowing emotion to show, my throat tight, eyes burning. I never forgot you either, Arthur. He stepped back, keeping one hand on my shoulder, turned toward the head table where Karen still stood, pale and trembling. His voice carried across the room. Karen, come here, now, and apologize to the man who saved your father. The ballroom held its breath. Karen stood frozen for 3 seconds. Then, slowly, she descended from the head table. Every eye followed her. The Vera Wang gown that had floated so elegantly hours ago now seemed to drag behind her. Her hands trembled at her sides. She crossed the ballroom, 30 feet that must have felt like 30 miles, toward table 8. Toward me. She stopped 3 feet away. Long pause. Uncomfortable silence stretched. Finally, she lifted her eyes. Tears streamed down her face, mascara running in black tracks. Mr. Matthews? Harold. Her voice shook. I didn't know, but that's no excuse. What I said tonight, about Halloween, about your appearance, it was cruel, unforgivable. She pressed her lips together, fighting sobs. You saved my father's life, and I mocked you. I'm so sorry, truly sorry. I watched her, face unreadable. Let the silence stretch. She needed to feel the weight of what she'd done. Finally, I spoke quietly. Apology accepted, Karen. But remember, appearance doesn't define a person. Real beauty is inside. I hope you've learned that tonight. Yes. She nodded, crying harder. I have. I promise I have. She turned, walked back to the head table. Gerald caught her, and she buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing. After a moment, Gerald stood, walked toward me alone, stopped before his father, eyes red-rimmed. Dad! The word cracked. I looked up at my son. I didn't know. His voice came out strained. You never told me the full story. I remembered you were a firefighter, that you'd been injured saving people, but not this. Not 17 lives, not Arthur. I didn't want to boast, Gerald. I kept my voice steady. But I hoped you'd defend me when it mattered. Pain flashed across his face. I know, I failed you. I was weak. I chose her comfort over your dignity, and His voice broke completely. I'm so sorry, Dad. I stood, faced him directly. Gerald's face crumpled. He started crying, not quiet tears, but sobs that shook his shoulders. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I pulled him into an embrace. He collapsed against me, crying on my shoulder like he hadn't since Margaret's funeral. Forgive me, Dad. Please forgive me. I stroked his back the way I'd done when he was small, when nightmares woke him. I love you, son. Always have, always will. I don't deserve it, he choked out. Love isn't about deserving. It just is. We stood there, father and son, while the ballroom watched. Some guests cried too, witnessing this reconciliation. Lawrence beside me had tears on his cheeks. When Gerald finally pulled back, wiping his face, others approached. Mike from Gerald's office came first, face flushed with embarrassment. Mr. Matthews, I whispered about your scars earlier, asked what happened to you. I'm deeply ashamed. You deserve nothing but respect, sir. Thank you, Mike. That means more than you know. Sarah joined him. Mr. Matthews, Gerald never told us about you, any of this. Now I understand where he gets his strength, from you. He's strong on his own, I replied. I just tried to set an example. Tom, one of Karen's friends who'd sat at our table, approached next. Sir, I laughed earlier when Karen made that comment. I didn't understand. I apologize. You deserve honor, not mockery. I nodded graciously, accepting. An elderly woman, Mrs. Wilson, took both my hands in hers. Young man, your story reminds me of my late husband. He was a firefighter, too, passed 20 years ago. You're special people, giving yourselves for others. Thank you for your service. Thank you, ma'am. That's very kind. Lawrence stood beside me throughout, beaming like a proud brother. Told you, Harold, truth always comes out. Finally, Nancy approached. She took my hand in both of hers, squeezing gently. Harold, without you, I would have lost Arthur 30 years ago. You gave us our life together, our family, Karen, this wedding, everything. We owe you everything. Mrs. Arnold, it's truly my honor. Please call me Nancy. She smiled through tears. You're family now. Arthur joined her, one arm around his wife, the other hand on my shoulder. The three of us stood connected, past and present woven together by fire and survival and this unlikely reunion. You'll always have a place at our table, Arthur said firmly. Always. The atmosphere in the ballroom had transformed completely. Earlier, I'd been invisible, mocked, excluded. Now conversations hummed with words like heroism, sacrifice, true character. Guests shared articles on their phones, pointing at photos of young Harold from 1995. Some looked ashamed, remembering they'd laughed at the Halloween comment. Others seemed genuinely inspired. I didn't want excessive attention, never had. But this recognition, earned through 30 years of silence, felt right somehow. Arthur's voice boomed again, no microphone needed this time. Harold, you're sitting in the wrong place. You're the father of the groom. Your seat is at the head table, with us. I started to refuse, but Gerald took one arm, Arthur the other. Together, they led me across the ballroom toward where I should have been all along. They seated me between Gerald and Arthur, the head table, where fathers sit. Karen, on Gerald's other side, smiled at me, tentative but genuine, trying. Nancy passed me a glass of champagne. A proper toast, she said warmly. For the first time that evening, I accepted. An older man, one of Arthur's colleagues, stood from his table, raised his glass. To Harold Matthews, a man who reminds us that true courage isn't found in a beautiful face, but in a great heart. To Harold! The response thundered from 300 voices. More toasts followed, each one honoring sacrifice, bravery, the man behind the scars. I raised my glass each time, humbled, as Gerald's arm stayed around my shoulders. At 10:15, the dance floor opened. Gerald and Karen took their first dance as husband and wife, swaying to Ed Sheeran's Thinking Out Loud. Then the MC announced, "Now, parents." Arthur swept Nancy onto the floor. They moved gracefully, decades of partnership evident in their steps. Then Gerald approached me, extending his hand. "Dad, dance with us?" I laughed. "I haven't danced in years, son." "Then it's time to start again." He took my hand, led me to the floor. We danced awkwardly. I stepped on his feet twice, and we both laughed like we hadn't in years. Karen joined us, tentatively taking my other hand. The three of us danced together, circle of three, symbol of unity and forgiveness and new beginnings. Guests applauded. Some cried at the beauty of it. Kevin's camera flashed repeatedly, capturing the moment for posterity. At 10:45, I stepped onto the terrace. Needed fresh air, space to process everything. Lake Michigan stretched dark before me. Chicago's skyline lit up against the night. February cold bit through my suit jacket, but I didn't mind. Arthur followed me out. We stood side by side, looking at the water. "You know, Harold, I searched for you for years after you left the department. Hospitals, fire stations, city records, lost track. After the burns, I withdrew," I admitted. "Didn't want people seeing me, didn't want pity. But tonight, you reminded me I'm more than my scars." Arthur's hand found my shoulder. "You always were more, Harold. Always." Quiet settled between us. Two men, shared history, unlikely reunion. "You'll always be welcome in our home," Arthur said. "Family dinners, holidays, birthdays. You're part of us now." I'd like that. And I meant it. At 11, the wedding began winding down. Gerald and Karen said goodbye to departing guests. Karen approached me one last time. "Harold, thank you for accepting my apology. I want to be better. Learn to see what's inside people, not just outside. I hope you do, Karen. It makes life much richer." Gerald embraced me tightly. "Dad, I'm so proud of you. Always was, just didn't know how to show it properly. Forgive me. I love you, Gerald. Be happy with Karen. Build a good life together. That's all I want. I'll come visit tomorrow. We'll talk about everything, about Mom, about the fire, about everything I should have asked years ago. I'd like that very much. One final group photo before I left. Herald Center, surrounded by Gerald, Karen, Arthur, Nancy, Lawrence, and others who'd become allies in this strange evening. Everyone smiling, genuine warmth replacing the earlier coldness. At 11:25, I exited the hotel. Lawrence walked me to the taxi stand outside. Well, Harold, he grinned. One unusual evening, wasn't it? More than that, Larry. It was an evening of justice. Truth won tonight. Always does, brother. Always. We embraced. I got into the waiting taxi, looked back at the Lakeshore Hotel one last time. Lit up against the night, beautiful, the place where my life changed. The taxi pulled away from the curb. I watched city lights slide past the window. Thought of Margaret. Wish she could have seen this. Meg, did you see? I didn't give up. I held my head high even when it was hardest. And truth came to light. Thank you for teaching me never to surrender. I did it. For you, for Gerald, for myself. We passed the lake, lights reflecting on dark water like scattered stars. I touched my left cheek, fingers tracing the familiar ridges of scar tissue, not with shame this time, with acceptance. These marks told a story worth telling. Real beauty is inside. My own words echoed in my mind. Gerald had heard them tonight. Maybe Karen had too. Maybe they'd remember. The taxi merged onto the highway toward Schaumburg. Behind me, the Lakeshore Hotel's lights faded into the distance. Ahead, the road stretched dark but clear. Tomorrow Gerald would visit. We'd talk, really talk, for the first time in too long. New beginning. I leaned back in the seat, closed my eyes. For the first time in a very long time, I felt at peace. Not because they finally saw me, but because I'd never stopped seeing myself. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.